A huge pattern change is coming, folks, and that is going to have major repercussions for many of us across the country. Until then, though, another day, another severe weather threat. Today, we have an enhanced level 3 risk of severe thunderstorms, including tornadoes, large hail up to baseball size potentially, and strong damaging winds over 70 miles per hour possible for portions of the upper Mississippi Valley and Central Plains. The threat shifts a little bit south and east tomorrow into the Central Plains, and then east through the rest of the week until we get toward the weekend. We're going to look at the long range, take a look at that pattern change, what it means for us. We'll have a look at your work week forecast. We're going to talk about the flooding threat that exists for part of the country today. And we're going to wrap it up with watching solar or sunspot 4114 that is turning center disk. It's shooting off solar flares at us. And so we're going to take a look at what that means as well. We're going to have your daily weather IQ question coming up in just a minute. We're going to start with the severe weather risk. And here it is from Billings, Montana, down here to northern Kansas, all the way up toward Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's where we find the greatest risk of tornadoes up here in central Minnesota. Down here in central Nebraska, we find a higher wind threat, but we're going to take a look at all of this. Slight risk extends from there, and then a marginal risk around that, but general shower and thunderstorm activity possible over much of the nation. Here's the tornado threat, not out of the question from Montana down to Nebraska, but really centered over Minnesota, where we see thunderstorms firing later along a boundary with low-level wind shear along that boundary and a little bit of a low-level jet coming in, but we've got really good wind shear and increasing winds with height. We also have decreasing temperature rapidly with height, which is going to lead to hail production. Look at this, potentially large hail over baseball, over 2-inch size, we'll call it, from Billings all the way into Minneapolis, around an arc there, and centered over Minnesota, where we see the highest threat for hail. Wind, again, biggest threat for wind in central Nebraska, where we've got good instability, really strong instability with low-level wind shear here today. That's the threat for today, kind of outline. Taking a look at the surface map, there's a little low pressure working through North Dakota. There's the boundary ahead of that. That's where thunderstorms can kind of move along and find a little bit of rotation to work with to potentially produce tornadoes. Boundary moving back toward Wyoming, and then this stationary boundary that's been sitting through the Ohio Valley and the lower mid-Atlantic, providing a focus for shower and thunderstorms each day to kind of train along, dump some heavy rain across portions of this area over the last 24 hours. We're going to take a look at that too. But general shower and thunderstorm activity possible today from the plains all the way into the Ohio Valley, lower mid-Atlantic, into the southeast. Won't be a washout, just like Cold Drizzle said yesterday on our short. Take a look. Pop-up showers and thunderstorms and hot. If we take a look at the temperatures today, really running in the 80s and 90s for much of the lower 4/5 of the nation. Really, when you get down here into Texas and over toward the desert Southwest, we're finding hundreds, and we're seeing some of those areas get up around 115 in the desert Southwest, where we find heat warnings in effect out there. A little bit cooler over the lower mid-Atlantic, eastern Ohio Valley, where we're seeing that little trough that's been slowly meandering to the east. It is cooling temperatures with clouds and cooler temperatures under that, of course, just because the heights are lower there too, a little precipitation too, and chillier up in the northeast as well. Cape value this afternoon, if we take a look at our instability map, look at this, exploding over Nebraska into Minnesota, where we find these purples and whites. That's 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram. That's pretty strong instability, folks, and you're seeing instability over much of the eastern section of the country, with the exception of the northeast. And so as we go through the overnight hours, that'll wane a little bit as thunderstorms consume some of that fuel and nocturnal cooling takes over. But tomorrow, again, look at this. Look at this. Big black colors now coming out, showing up in Kansas and Oklahoma. These are over 5,000. This is very, very strong instability, and that's where we're going to see the threat maximize tomorrow. But anywhere along in here, you're going to see in the Central Plains potential for severe weather, and then over into the southeast, plenty of fuel for pop-up showers and thunderstorms. That's what happens as we go through the next couple of days. Looking at the radar this morning, the future radar as we go through the afternoon, seeing some showers move through portions of the upper plains into Minnesota, Wisconsin. As we go through the afternoon, we'll start to see really a renewal of that of that activity. Pop-up showers and thunderstorms, even some clusters and little segments forming across the southeast. Much of these areas have seen plenty of rain, and we're going to continue to see that, particularly in West Virginia, into North Carolina, and back over into Kentucky and southern Indiana and Illinois as well. Supercells starting to fire up in the northern plains and across Nebraska. Look here at Minnesota. That's where we're seeing probably a best tornado threat. We're going to see those eventually form in the late afternoon, early evening hours, get together here and move into clusters, kind of merge into clusters and line segments, really enhancing that wind threat. As we get on through the evening hours, overnight, some of this activity is going to maintain. You're going to hear thunder down here in Nebraska and Kansas and Iowa and parts of the southeast too. You'll still see some rain showers as we work into the well overnight hours, into the midnight hour and beyond. So pay attention out here in Kansas. We're going to see that activity continue to maintain itself as well. Tomorrow's surface map, much the same as today's, just the focus is a little bit farther south. As this boundary slips south, we'll see a flooding threat pick up eastern Kansas, western Missouri, up toward the Kansas City area and toward Ames, and then over in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and eastern Kentucky too could see a little bit of flooding as thunderstorms continue to train along this stationary boundary. But showers and thunderstorms across much of the eastern country, portion of the country from the plains all the way to the East Coast. And then as we go on out into tomorrow and take a look at tomorrow's severe weather threat, kind of looks like today's in the same shape. Almost looks like a little heart here from the panhandle of Nebraska over in toward Ames, Iowa. That's where we find the greatest threat of severe weather. And in the middle of that, we see an enhanced level 3 risk already for tomorrow for central Kansas. So look out for strong winds, damaging hail, and tornadoes as well in these areas. Isolated thunderstorms around that with severe, isolated severe weather reports, and also in West Virginia, basically Western Virginia and West Virginia too is what I'm trying to say there. An isolated severe report not out of the question. Again, tornadoes are not impossible tomorrow. In fact, with a little boundary over Kansas, we could see that low-level spin in the atmosphere produce some tornadoes. Wind is going to be the primary threat, and hail as well. With those decreasing temperatures with height, we're going to see plenty of instability in these areas too. So we've got a big threat. That's why we've got a big hail threat here. So take cover tomorrow, folks. If you start to get weather alerts, pay attention. Take those alerts seriously. The severe weather threat will continue to push east from Oklahoma up into Wisconsin, southwest to northeast, and around that a marginal risk for more isolated severe weather reports and general shower and thunderstorm activity again for much of the east as these troughs kind of work through. And that's your severe weather report for today, folks. That brings us into today's Weather IQ question. Now, I put together an easy Weather IQ question for us today just because it's Monday and we don't need to get started off with a hard one, do we? No, that's right, we don't. So the question is, and I'm sure you've seen enough earthquake movies and watched enough news reports about earthquake that you know this. What is the term for a smaller earthquake that follows a major one? An aftershock, a tremor, a foreshock, or a subquake? And the answer is going to be revealed at the end of the show. If you know it, though, type it in the comments section, and we'll go from there. So next up is a look at your work week forecast. So as we take a look at your work week forecast, the things that are driving the weather really essentially are a couple of troughs and a couple of ridges. A trough working into the west coast here, a little subtle trough working through the northern plains, another kind of deeper trough. You can see these lines, these black lines, that the kinks in the lines, that indicates a trough, and then another little subtle wave moving through the mid-Atlantic. That's what's going on. We've got a big heat dome out here in the southwest, and those are the main features. Oh, the other thing too I wanted to show you is a Bermuda high sitting offshore here, just pumping in clockwise flow around this thing, just pumping in tons of moisture into the eastern portion of the country, and that's what's helping to fuel thunderstorm activity, instability. These troughs have something to work with. It's not dry, of course, and there's no big ridge in the upper atmosphere, so that's why we're seeing lots of shower and thunderstorm activity through the course of the week, and that'll just persist. As you see here, we get on into Tuesday, tomorrow afternoon, trough number 1 working through the Ohio Valley and into the Tennessee Valley. Trough number 2 coming in here into Kansas, sparking showers and thunderstorms through the plains area. Tomorrow we get on into Wednesday. Trough number 1 starts to just slowly get toward the coast. These will start to interact a little bit. Trough number 2 coming in here through the Mississippi Valley. Another trough working into the west eventually, but look at this big heat dome. It just sort of stays in place out here first part of the week. We get on into Thursday. There's the big trough with these wind maxes moving through, and that will continue as we go on out through Friday afternoon. And finally, look look what happens by the time we get into late Friday and toward 7 p.m., 8 p.m. East Coast time on Friday. Look at this. Big ridge starts to take shape here in the Central Plains, and that will continue to translate east. We'll take a look at that in our longer range forecast, but that's going to have big ramifications for all of us. In the meantime, showers and thunderstorms are going to be prevalent tomorrow as we get on into tomorrow afternoon. Big time shower and thunderstorm activity through the Central Plains in the areas that we outlined earlier for the severe weather threat. You see those clusters building up, showers and thunderstorms for much of the Ohio Valley east toward the East Coast. Some of that will die out overnight, some of it will not. So in the Central Plains, you'll really start to see those MCSs progress through the evening hours as instability will still be in place. We get on to the morning on Wednesday, a little low pressure working up toward the Great Lakes. That'll enhance the severe weather threat. Probably we'll see an enhanced severe weather threat emerge out of that slight risk that we've already seen set up. So we'll have a cold front advancing toward the coast. Again, general showers and thunderstorms Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. That low pressure will drag a cold front through the Tennessee Valley, bringing showers and thunderstorms. May see some organization with those along the coast where we have a day 4 slight risk already in place. And then as we get toward Friday, look what happens. Ridging starts to really put a cap on the atmosphere out here across the southern portion of the country. Air flowing around that and the jet stream will bring pieces of energy through the northern tier, and we could see that light up for a time over the next few days as we get toward the weekend, a couple days beyond into the next week, before big ridging moves into the east. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. Regarding temperatures, the chilliest regions that we're going to find here is in the mid-Atlantic. This is Monday. We've already taken a look at this, so let's just advance that on to Tuesday. That'll move up into the Northeast Tuesday, 70s, upper 70s across much of the northern tiers. That trough works in toward the Intermountain West and Rocky Mountains. We're going to see plenty of cooler air associated with that. Return flow back into eastern Pacific Northwest. Hundreds showing up now into almost into the Kansas border here, folks. We're going to see plenty of heat continuing under that heat dome in the southwest with 80s working into the Great Lakes, 80s and 90s through the southeast on Wednesday. On Thursday, same regime, a little, cooler across the northeast, but still mild and above normal up into the plains, a little bit below normal, maybe out here in the Pacific Northwest working in, but again, 80s and 90s getting hot, 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 and very muggy for much of the nation. Desert Southwest continuing to bake. Thursday, same story, just getting hotter. Hotter is the theme as we go through the week. And then Friday, maybe the exception is the northern tier where the ridge arc is centered over the center of the country. And so the northeastern section and the northwestern section is where we find a little bit of cooler air with troughing up there. Looking at the satellite picture this morning, you can see most of the United States in the eastern section of the country anyway, with the exception of some parts of the southeast and Florida and the northeast, all under significant cloud cover with a little bit of rain falling, a couple of thunderstorms out there as well. The alerts map shows, let me get down here to my alerts display, hot temperatures in the southwest with heat advisories. Extreme heat warnings are up for temperatures moving into Death Valley around 115, maybe upwards of 100 and close to 120 in some spots out here. Look at Alaska up here. Heat advisories up for Alaska for temperatures in the 80s up here. And it's going to be nasty even in Alaska. Red flag warnings, very dry, hot, windy. Don't burn anything out here in Utah, Colorado, and Nevada. And then we've got flood watches up. So our flooding threat, we have a concern here for some areas from Tennessee Kentucky into West Virginia and North Carolina. Over the past 24 hours, we've seen lots of areas with fairly significant rain, and much more has fallen beyond that over the last 3 days. So we've just seen repeated rounds of showers and thunderstorms. 1 to as much as 4 or 5 inches of rain have fallen in some of these areas. Look at North Carolina here over from Raleigh. We get on in here, just in the eastern sections around I-95. We've seen 4 or 5 inches of rain here, out here in Arkansas, up in Missouri as well. We've seen a lot of rain, and we're going to expect that to continue. A slight risk of excessive rainfall into the basically mid-Mississippi Valley into the lower Ohio Valley and then from West Virginia down into eastern North Carolina today, where we're going to see plenty of shower and thunderstorm activity. In fact, taking a look here at what the NAM is showing as we get on into the afternoon, early afternoon hours, we're starting to see thunderstorms fire up along some previous outflow boundaries. Also up here in Kentucky and southern Illinois and Indiana. As we progress through the afternoon, we'll see several clusters and line segments form here, plenty of pop-up showers and thunderstorms everywhere, but you can just see really where the big areas of precipitation are until we get on into the overnight hours. That's going to yield a lot of areas seeing 1 to 2, 3 inches of rain. It's not going to be everybody, but certainly where we've already seen plenty of rain, the ground is saturated. You get a couple of quick inches of rain, flash flooding just like that. So take flood alert seriously. Pay attention from West Virginia into the North Carolina area in a situation like this, from Charleston over to eastern North Carolina, really up in here, New Bern, Raleigh, places like that. And then we're looking at southern Indiana, southern Illinois, into western Kentucky over here around Paducah, the Boot Hill, Missouri. Pay attention for flooding in your area as well, folks. And then looking out toward the long range, here's what's going on. Look, we've got this big trough. This is Friday morning, big ridge in the country. You see this, where you see these big bright colors here, orange and kind of getting not red, but just deeper orange. That's where our ridge is. Trough. So the jet stream kind of flows along this area to the north. So anywhere along that boundary to the north is going to be a little bit colder or cooler, and below it is going to be warmer. And that's where the storm track is. So that's where we'll expect to see storms across the northern tier flowing into the northeast as we get on into the weekend. But if we move this out over time, look at this. Big ridging starts to develop in the east. This is a big pattern changer. We see a big trough in the west sort of stagnate, and this big ridge, it's going to get hot, 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 folks. We're going to see plenty of 90s in the east under this massive ridge centered right here over the Tennessee Valley. So we are going to start to get hot as we get on into the weekend, and that is just going to continue through the foreseeable future. Look at the ridge axis really starts to center up in toward the northeast. That's where the highest heights are. So relative to normal, that's where the highest temperatures are going to be relative to normal, but still most of the country going to bake along the eastern seaboard, eastern half of the country. That seems to continue through as we get toward the end of June, the trough staying in the west, so maybe unsettled and cooler out west with a boundary in the middle somewhere. Northern plains could see some severe weather out of this too as we go on out in time. Looking at the heat, 5-day averages kind of smooth everything out. Ending next Tuesday, so really Friday to Tuesday, Thursday to Tuesday, something like that. This is your average height temperatures relative to normal. So heat centered over the plains, and that just moves into the Great Lakes, into the Northeast. Look at this. We are going to bake in the east over the next probably, we get to the end of this week, out toward the end of June. So probably a good 2 weeks of relatively hot conditions in the east and muggy to boot. Your cooler relative to normal will be out west, and could see unsettled weather out there too. Here is what the Weather Prediction Center is showing us. Highest signal above normal in the east, lowest signal for below normal out west under the influence of troughing. Alaska and Hawaii both cooking. And here is the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, northern tier, where we'll find the little systems kind of moving along that ridge axis at the top of it anyway. More rain than normal below along the east and below out in the desert southwest. Maybe get a little bit of break here in southern Texas. Need some rain out there too. Alaska and Hawaii above. And now we come to the sunspot stuff here, folks. So look at this. X-ray flux. Boom, 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 all the way up into almost X-class solar flare. And that is courtesy of this sunspot here. And I've already taken the liberty. I did this earlier. My computer crashed and I had to redo it. But look at this. Here's the bright spot. That sunspot is turning toward us, 4114. It's been shooting off solar flares, coronal hole to the south of us, but it's a little bit too far south to hurt us too badly in terms of solar wind. And then we get over here into sunspot 4114. There it is. And look at this. Magnetism is interspersed. That means interaction of these magnetic fields can increase the likelihood of solar flaring, and some of these could get big. So we've already seen some near X class, which is the highest level that there is. So we'll continue to watch that. Haven't really seen anything in the way of earthquake activity, but there's the sunspot that we're watching. Big sunspot cluster. It's been growing in size and complexity. Nothing here on the volcano front. Not really any reason that I'm showing you this, just the same ring of fire volcanoes that we've been watching spur Great Sitkiahi and Kilauea. So nothing else going on there. Moon data, 73.4%, a waning gibbous. It's a third quarter moon. It's headed down toward zero, which is a new moon. And there is your sun and moon field. We are bright and sunny here in the United States, and it is a bright and sunny day here in Morganton so far. And I want to tell you one more thing. We'll get to the answer to our Weather IQ question. We've got over 800 subscribers now. Thank you all for signing up. If you haven't yet signed up, please consider subscribing and joining the team here. Give us a like. That's the only way we can grow the community, is if people subscribe, like, comment, turn on notifications, things like that. That tells YouTube to push the video out. So if you like what you're seeing, help us grow it. Help me grow. And make suggestions to me. Let me know if there's anything I can pray over for you. Pray over for you, pray over all of you every day. So continue to pray for me as well. And finally, we'll wrap it on up here with our Weather IQ answer. And so the question was, what is the term for a smaller earthquake that follows a major one? And the answer is an aftershock. And I'm sure you knew an aftershock. That's what we see. Big earthquake, 8.5, and then we get an aftershock of a 7.3 and another aftershock of a 6.4 and stuff like that. That's what happens. Sometimes we get 4 shocks, which are what? What would you guess that would be? Right before the earthquake, you might see a little ramp up in activity, boom, then you get the big one. And also, just so you know, if you didn't know this, today in 1903, Henry Ford and a group of investors met and incorporated Ford Motor Company. So that was founded on June the 16th, 1903. And now you know about cars, now you know about sunspots and all of the weather for the week. There you have it, folks. So I appreciate you tuning in today. This is Cold Rain, as always, reminding you other stations run 24/7. We've got you covered right here, right now, 4814. Take care, folks. Have a great day.